It's a truly. Okay, we're going to start. So we're on 159. We're going to just do a little bit of review from last time. So I'm going to review a question the Gemara asks about the Eruv without going into detail. I'm just going to look at the answer. So there's a claim from the Gemara that the Mishnah has an internal contradiction regarding the Eruv. One part of the Mishnah is relatively lenient regarding an Eruv, and one part of the Mishnah is relatively strict. So what we're going to find out, I'm just going to read this little paragraph right now, is that, and this is often the answer when the rabbis find what they think is an internal contradiction, turns out there's more than one Eruv. So then there's going to be different laws for the different kinds of Eruvs. So that's what we're going to look at right now. Page 159, the very last paragraph. Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav Chia bar Ashi, Amar Rav, so it comes back to Rav, lo kashya. So what you thought was a contradiction is not a contradiction. Kan be'eruvei tchumim. Okay, so this is one kind of Eruv, an Eruv called an Eruv of boundaries. Kan be'eruvei chatzerot. And one is an Eruv of courtyards. So the Eruv that we are most familiar with is the latter, the Eruv of courtyards, where you extend the area that you can carry, because you're not allowed to carry. That's a Torah law, by the way. You can't carry on Shabbat outside of your domain. So you make a bigger domain. And that's called a courtyard Eruv, where you're just extending your courtyard to include many, many courtyards. There is another Eruv. There's actually several Eruvs. I mean, there's at least three, but here they're only talking about two. The Eruv Tchumim is you're also not allowed to travel a certain amount. And how much is actually a subject of debate, but you're not allowed to travel, you're not allowed to walk very far. Obviously, you can't drive in your car, and you can't operate machinery, but you can't even walk too far. You can't, and there's different definitions of it, mostly too much outside of your town. So you can extend the size of your town with an Eruv, with the same idea, with the string. You're just making your town bigger, and then that helps you to walk. So if you want to visit your uncle on Shabbat, and he lives outside of town, you just extend your town. So that's an Eruv. So for the Eruv Tchumim, the rabbis are stricter about it. We actually could read this. Maybe I'll read this at the bottom, just because Steinsaltz always explains things better than me. And if you don't understand Steinsaltz, then there's no way I can explain it, because he's going to be much better at explaining it. So if you look where it says notes on the bottom right, here it is referring to the joining of Shabbat boundaries. The stringency of the joining of Shabbat boundaries, Eruv Tchumim, stems from the dispute whether or not the prohibition to travel beyond city limits on Shabbat is by Torah law. All right, so that's in dispute. It's very clear you can't carry on Shabbat. That's in the Torah. Well, it's not so much in the Torah, but it's easily derivable from the Torah. The idea that you can't travel too far, there's a dispute whether that's actually in the Torah or it's something that rabbis added. Rabbis would add laws for our own benefit to keep us away from violating more serious laws. So is this a rabbinic law? That's what it would be called, de Rabbanan, or is it de Oraita? If it's rabbinical, then it could be less strict. Like, we don't have to pay as much attention to it, or we'd be more lenient in interpreting it. All right. But some Tanaim, those are rabbis, are of the opinion that the halakha of Shabbat boundaries is by Torah law, as it is stated, abide you every man in his place, let no man go out of his place. Even as a hold that the 2,000 cubit Shabbat boundary is by rabbinic law, understand that the essential Shabbat boundary, 12 mil, which really is about 12 miles, by the way, beyond city limits is by Torah law. Okay, so most people think that the 12 miles beyond city limits is a Torah law, and that the only way you can travel that far, which is pretty far, right, 12 miles, but you actually can if you put up an Eruv before Shabbat. Right. Okay, but, all right. So it's two kinds of Eruvs. All I'm saying here, all we're learning from this is that there are two types of Eruvs, and the rabbis will treat those different Eruvs differently. They will tend to be stricter about one than the other. Okay? We'll go into detail now. So turn the page 160. Were there questions about that, the two types of Eruv? All right. So now we have an interesting case about the Eruv. Rather complicated. So you'll help me with this. There's higher math.
You got a couple of lawyers.
Good. We need lawyers and mathematicians, logicians. Ve'amar Rava. So Rava, what we're studying now is Rava has a series of statements about Eruvs. So here's one. Amrulo Shnaim. So two people said to one guy, Say va'arev lanu. go and make an Eruv for us. So this is a professional Eruv doer. Guy makes Eruvs for a living, and he's got 2 clients. So the 2 clients would go say to him, go make an Eruv. Of course, that's very inexact. What kind of Eruv? What kind of Eruv are you looking for? And it's not a question of like, what color thread do you want? It's halachically, what kind of Eruv? But the only information we have right now is that 2 people say to the one guy, the Eruv maker, go make an Eruv. Le'achad, so for one, Erev alav mi ba'od yom. Okay, so one, there was no question. He put it on Friday during the day, which would mean there's no question at all. It's a kosher Eruv, because it's up before Shabbat. If it's up before Shabbat, it's fine. Okay? U'le'achad, Erev elav ben hashmashot. The other, this by the way is also not in question. The other one, he put up the Eruv during twilight. Now, twilight's a difficult time. We talk about that next time. Because twilight, you actually are just not sure. It's called safek. Safek is doubt. You don't know whether Shabbat started or not. If the Eruv went up and Shabbat started already, it's not valid. Okay? If it went up and it's light, it's totally valid. And you can carry, you can do whatever you want. Okay? So he puts up 2 Eruvs. One, without question, was during the day. One was during twilight, which means we're not sure whether it was the day or not. We're not sure whether it's valid or not. Okay. But that doesn't, we're going to continue now. It gets even more complicated. Okay. The one he'd put up during the day got eaten. That's a danger of erus. Animals come and they eat them. It's a piece of, it got eaten. Now, does it mean really an animal came and ate it? It could be. That may have been one of the dangers. There were lions, wandering around and they ate the Eruv. Or you could say any disaster and it just fell. Okay. Now it was up when it should have been up on Friday. However, it got eaten ben hashmashot. It got eaten on twilight. Okay. Now if it got eaten after dark, remember this from last week? It counts. Right. Remember, it doesn't actually have to be up all of Shabbat. As long as it was put up on Friday and it was up, when it was dark, then it's fine, and then it gets eaten. That's no problem. The problem is it got eaten during twilight, and we don't know how to define twilight yet. Twilight can be during the day. If it got eaten during the day, then it doesn't count because it wasn't up when Shabbat starts. But if it got eaten at night, it doesn't matter if it's up or not. Okay, is that clear? Really? Okay, great. Now remember, there's 2 erus though. So the one during the day got eaten. It was twilight. So one was put up at twilight. That got eaten when it was dark. Okay? Now we want to know what the issue is. We want to know what the law is. Okay? It's because we've got doubt for both. It got eaten. The one that was for sure kosher went up on time. That got eaten, but maybe it got eaten during the day because we don't know what twilight is. Okay? If it got eaten during the day, it doesn't count. Okay? Now the other one was put up at twilight. Okay? Now the fact that it got eaten at night wouldn't matter, right? Because it got eaten at night. Really the only thing that matters is was it up when it should have been up? And we don't know that. Okay, the law is, ready? The law is Shnehem Kana Eruv. Both of them count. So in other words, you assume the lenient position for each, for this particular Eruv. So the one that got put up at twilight, you assume that twilight at that point is day. Okay? The one that got eaten at twilight, now notice it's a contradiction, but it's not really a contradiction because you're just assuming the benefit for the town. So the one that got eaten at twilight, you're assuming got eaten during the night. So in one case, twilight's the day. In the other case, twilight's the night. And the reason is to make it more convenient for the people that are living by the rules. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. However, if you're a real nudnik about this, you're going to say, wait a second, you're not being consistent in defining twilight.
There's a gap.
So what is twilight? Is it day? Is it night? You've actually contradicted yourself. In one case it's day, in one case it's night. You have to be a little more sophisticated to say, no, what I'm doing is I'm defining it according to what's most convenient for me right now.
Right.
That's how so you can do that. Apparently, Rav did it. Right? Or Rava, I should say Rava. Right. Rav was a different guy. This is Rava. Okay. All right, any questions? Yeah.
If you definitely put it up during the day,
Uh-huh.
and it's a fairly large one, so you go out and you find that on your way to synagogue, you find your cousins for dinner, you find that it's been eaten.
Uh-huh.
But you don't know when. It could have been eaten while it was still day.
Yeah.
Should we suppose that the same thing holds true? That your intentions were there, so...
It's the intent.
Okay.
Yes, I think if you don't know when it got eaten. Now, if you're walking to shul, it could still be light out.
Right.
And then you see that it was eaten, then you know it doesn't count.
Correct.
it's too late to do anything about it.
Oh, and you're carrying something? Yeah, well, that's a good question. You put it down and you come and get it after Shabbat. I mean, that's what you have to do. Yeah. Hope it's there. Right. But it could be that the lion that ate the eruv is going to come and eat your meal. Yeah, or your talis.
So the moral of the story is
But I think what's interesting about this is that you're defining twilight according to what's most convenient, and it doesn't have to be there. I mean, you could say we should define it according to what's most strict, and say that neither eruv counts. We could say that the one that was put up during twilight, that's dark, and we could say the one that was eaten during twilight, we're going to call that day, and we're going to say that neither eruv counts. So Rava at least wants to say, in both cases, we're going to define it according to what's most convenient for us, which means the eruv goes up. Okay. Not everybody would see it that way. We're talking about Rava here.
This magnanimous behavior came from all of a sudden. I mean, they're so rigid now. All of a sudden.
Well, they're not always that rigid. They're not. Yes. I mean, that's later we became more rigid. But the Talmud's actually very flexible. Okay. Anyway, we've got somebody that's already manavshach. So manavshach kind of means what the heck, or manavshach is you're what's with your soul. That's literally what it means. What's with your soul? But it's a term in the Talmud which means, like, I don't understand this, or what the heck. This is very surprising to me. Now I'll read it. If twilight is during the day, batre lekne. Okay. If twilight we always define as day, then the second one would be valid. Kama lo lekne. But the first one wouldn't be. Okay. Lailahu. And if twilight is always defined as evening, kame lekne, then the first one would count, batra lo lekne, but the second one wouldn't. So here it's what I said before. They're trying to get you to be consistent about defining twilight, and if you're consistent, then one of those erus is not going to be kosher. Okay. And so they're trying to kind of clarify. So now the answer is beinash mashmot svekahu. So no. Twilight is neither light nor day. It's in a category all its own called safek, which means doubt. It's in a category of doubt. So it depends on the circumstance. It depends on the halakha. Different halakhas will be different depending on how serious they are. So in this one, when it comes to eruv, Rava is defining this as not a particularly serious halakha, so therefore he's allowed to define it the most lenient way possible, the most convenient way possible. So svekahu, usveka de Rabbanan lekula. So, and this is actually a halakhic principle. When something is in doubt, and it's a rabbinic ordinance, as opposed to a Torah ordinance, a rabbinic ordinance, lekula means that you can always rule according to what's most convenient. Right, or most lenient, convenient and lenient. So when we're talking about not traveling, even some people with carrying, depends on where, we're talking about rabbinic enactments and not Torah enactments, so we can be a little bit more strict, and we'll define the safek the doubt to our benefit. Okay, that's not always the case.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so the reality is that's just practical, because if you are inspecting the Erev Shabbos,
right,
you can't wait till just the minute before
right.
Shabbos starts
right.
and be back home and be ready for Shabbos.
There's certainly an element,
yes. There has to be and also if you're putting it up, you have to be able to see what you're doing. So you would think there's enough light to see what you're doing, even if it's twilight.
There's definitely an element of practicality for this. It wouldn't work otherwise.
Right.
The whole thing of erus, the distances are too big. So you've got to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. That's why what I think is very interesting is that if it goes down, and it's Shabbat already, it still counts.
Right.
I think that's very interesting.
Out of your control.
Right, it's out of your control, and I think in those days a lot could go wrong.
Yes.
There's winds, there's animals.
Even here, even today.
Right.
I mean,
that's
think of the wind of yesterday.
Right. That's right.
Right.
Right. We don't have to worry about wild animals quite as much, but winds. So they're very lenient about it. That's actually, if you think about it, that's an extremely lenient way of looking at it. All right, you meant to put it up, so that counts. I mean, you don't expect that necessarily from the law, but that's what they're saying. You meant to put it up, and it's the intent that counts. It was up when it should have been. It doesn't matter that it's fallen right now. It was up when it should have been. So you created the distinction of every house is now the same house, and we're going to give you the benefit for doing that, even though the string fell down. Okay, do a little bit more. Some interesting stuff here. Rava. Rava's now off on a riff. And we're reading. This happens sometimes in the Talmud, where they're only loosely connected. Well, they're connected because they're Shabbat laws. So Rava has something else to say. Amar Rava, Mipnei ma amru. So why did the rabbis say? So he's analyzing this particular comment. This is the comment. Aim tomnim b'davar she'eno masif hevel meshecha shecha. Okay. So why did the rabbis say that you don't? Let's say aim tomnim b'davar. You don't insulate. That's the word I'm looking for. So you don't insulate. So this goes back to you want to try to keep water hot or food hot all through Shabbat. How did they do that before electricity? I'm asking. Well, they couldn't keep a fire going because it can't be a fire because you can't.
Blankets or stuff like that.
Yeah. So first of all, they had insulating material. That's not like necessarily modern technology. Or there was things like ashes. Ashes that you would, and then you would put it in there, and it would. But the tricky thing was, it's not allowed to come to a boil. So if it's water, it's not allowed to come to a boil on Shabbat. So you can keep it warm, but not too warm. So because if it adds heat, then you're cooking it, and you're not allowed to cook on Shabbat. So it's kind of a tricky thing. It's got to be at a steady temperature. Okay. So you don't insulate something after it's already dark. So after Shabbat starts, you're not allowed then to insulate something. So, and of course that doesn't make any sense because why wouldn't you be able to? Because you're not. So yeah, you finish eating the cholent and it's Friday night and you put it back on the blech. You're actually not allowed to do that.
Put
now,
it back on the
blech. The blech is the thing that keeps it heated. They didn't have blechs in those days. Just a great word. I like using the word blech. It's just a piece of metal that
fits on the burners.
It fits on the burners, right? Yeah. So, but in the old days they had things like ashes, or they would have insulating material. But once Shabbat has started, you can put it on before Shabbat. But once Shabbat has started, you can't put it on, even though it doesn't add heat. So it's gonna keep it at a steady temperature. Adding heat would be cooking, and you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so Rava is asking, why aren't you allowed to put something that keeps it at a steady temperature, insulating, even after Shabbat started? Because you're allowed to do it before Shabbat for sure, but you're not allowed to do it after Shabbat started, even though it's not going to add heat. This is gzeira. So gzeira means like a fence around the Torah. Right. It's even though you're allowed to do it, it's concerned that you will then come to violate something that you're clearly not allowed to do. Gzeira shema yartiach. It's possible that it would still come to a boil in its water. And Rashi says because sometimes they generally would use ashes, and they're not aware that the ashes have some sparks in them. And if the ashes have some sparks, it can lead to fire, and then fire could lead to boiling, and then you're boiling water on Shabbat, which you're not allowed to do. So once Shabbat starts, you can't then add the water back. So what you have to do is, this is what you'll see in religious homes, is you go to the water, right? You keep the water in the thing. You don't lift it off the blech. You go to the blech and then right.
Or you have an urn and you turn.
Or you have an urn and you turn
it to
right.
boiling before Shabbat and then
Right. If you set everything's up before Shabbat, then it's okay because you're not doing anything and you've done it before Shabbat. Yeah. Okay. Amar le Abaye. So Abaye says, Ihachi bein hashmashot na'ami nigzar. So Abaye says, well, if that's the case, remember we're talking about in twilight also you shouldn't be able to do it. Remember that twilight is that time you're not sure whether it's night or it's day. So and twilight. Now, are we got in this case when it comes to insulating food? Keep it warm on Shabbat, are we going to consider twilight day or night? So that has to do with the seriousness of the prohibition. Is it a rabbinic prohibition that you can't heat food on Shabbat, or is it a biblical prohibition? Anybody know? It's a Torah prohibition because it's cooking and boiling. So then you're going to be stricter for twilight. You're going to interpret twilight then as being dark, because the more lenient interpretation would be light. But here, when it comes to heating, cooking food, it's a Torah prohibition. It's stricter, so we have to define twilight in its most strictest sense, which would be during the day. Okay. Amarle, I'll just finish this. Amarle stam k'dei rot chodhen, and they say also during twilight, you can assume it's a possibility that it could come to a boil. Even before Shabbat, so even when it goes past twilight and goes to darkness. We're gonna,
I was going to ask, so is that one of the reasons that you actually light Shabbos candles 20 minutes before sunset?
Yeah. You before sunset, yeah.
Yes.
You're lighting them when it's very clearly dark. It's not twilight. It's not twilight.
No, it's not dark.
Right, exactly. You're lighting them when it's not dark. Right.
Yeah,
Right. It's not even close to dark.
Correct.
Right. If you're in Jerusalem too and the siren goes off, I think in Jerusalem it's like 40 minutes before. So it's very clearly light. They want to make sure you're lighting the candles before. In fact, I know people in Jerusalem that the siren will go off. This is what Jews will do, right? So the siren will go off and they think, oh, well, I've got another 20 minutes. and the rabbis in Jerusalem want to say now Shabbat starts. But everybody knows it's 20 minutes before the 20 minutes. So they're like, I got plenty of time.
Right.
So that's when they start rushing. That's when they start cooking.
You better get
when the siren goes off.
Before.
Yeah, that's right.
Before you light the candles. Right.
All right, we'll do a little bit more. Mipnei ma ve'amar Rava. Rava's got another statement. Okay, ready? Mipnei ma amru ein tomnim b'davar hamosif hevel afilu me ba'od yom. Okay, so and why don't we put food on a flame that we know will for sure add heat in the course of Shabbat on Friday? We're not allowed to do that. Okay, you would think we would be allowed to do it because the work we're performing is actually done on Friday.
Right.
So theoretically, that's fine. Like, so it cooks, but it's cooking by itself.
Right.
So we should be able to do that. So in other words, you theoretically should be able to put food on a live flame on Shabbat, as long as you do it on Friday. But in fact, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, why not? Gzeira shema yatmin beremetz yesh bakachelet. Why? Because there could be a little flame there, and the flame could turn to a bigger flame and a bigger flame, and it could actually be cooking. And then you've actually cooked because you started the process, and you violated the law against cooking. Okay. Amar le Abaye v'yatmin. So an Abaye says, so what? Actually, because so what? Because in the fact, I'm not doing the cooking.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about it, so all I did was I put this thing. It's Friday. I put this thing on a hot thing.
Right.
I didn't cook. I mean, then in and of itself, it cooked, but I didn't do anything on Shabbat. So that's Abaye's. Abaye's position actually would be that you would be allowed to do it. And actually, I think Abaye's got logic on his side because the fact is that you haven't done anything. All you've done was set something in motion, but you actually haven't performed and when you put it there on Friday, you're not at that point. You're not cooking it. Even if it cooks on Shabbat, heats up a little bit on Shabbat. That's because of something that happened and you hadn't touched it. Okay.
Yeah.
But so now we have the answer according to law, the Jewish law. You're still not allowed to do it, but here's the reason. Gzeira, it's a gzeira because you may be tempted. There's it's protecting you. Shema yachteba gechalim, because you may unconsciously go to it and think, oh, just like I'm looking at these ashes here, and what do you do when you see ashes? You may take a stick and stir them, and in stirring them on Shabbat, you're not supposed to do it, but you can't help yourself because you're seeing food, and what's a natural inclination when you see food and you see ashes? You want to play with it a little bit. As soon as you've played with the flame a little bit, then you've cooked. Right. So, and that's the reason why you're not allowed to do it. So it's not actually that you're cooking on Shabbat, because you're not cooking on Shabbat. It's that you may then be tempted to stir the ashes, because that's human nature, and we're protecting you from your own human nature. Okay, and that that comes up in Shabbat laws. That's the whole basis of muktzah, by the way. Yeah. So muktzah is certain things you're not supposed to touch on Shabbat, even though it doesn't matter. Like you're not allowed to touch a pen, because once you touch the pen, human nature is that you might write with it. You may forget. You forget it's Shabbat. So you're not even allowed to touch it. So the same thing. You actually could put food on a flame on Friday, but you will be tempted then to stir it, to do something, some action which will be cooking, and you're not allowed to cook. So the rabbis are saving us from our own human nature. We should be grateful to them for that.